Hello everybody, it's your friendly digital technology librarian, Christy here. We've reached another Friday, so of course I have another Film Rec Friday ready for everybody out there. Now, today's episode is a special one. It goes out to all my fellow Stranger Things fans, as well as anybody else who happens to really enjoy films and TV series from the 80s. Sometimes it's just really fun to delve into retro topics like that. But before I get really started on this week's Rex, let me do a big spoiler warning for anybody who has not watched any of the series or who isn't caught up. I'm not going to be referencing anything that's like massive reveal about the universe, but there are some people who really detest spoilers in any way, shape, or form. So if you are one of those people, this episode might not be for you. But if you don't mind, or if you are all caught up, I think today's episode is going to be a really, really fun one. Anyway, we are about a month out since the last episodes of the 4th season aired, and if you're anything like me, you might be kind of at a loss. I mean, there are only so many times you can rewatch your favorite scenes. There's only so many times that you can rehash and dissect characters and character arcs. So, at about a month out, you might be feeling a little burnout. But we also have an unknown wait for the next season, and we know that tons of stuff is going to be happening. So what do you do now? Like, what shows would be interesting to watch? There are tons and tons of, comparable shows and lists that recommend other things to watch. If you are a Stranger Things fan, definitely you should check those out because you'll find loads and loads of recommendations there. But today, what I want to do is I want to kind of dive into Stranger Things references. So movies and TV series that are either blatantly referenced in Stranger Things or that are just kind of nods to other fans from the 80s. And those little tiny nods are almost more fun to pick out than the ones that where it's clearly like, oh, this is what we're talking about. Anyway, tons of those references are available to you entirely for free with the use of your Milan-Berlin library card. And those are going to be found on one of our video services. Those are CleveNet's Overdrive, Hoopla Digital, and Canopy. So if you are a Stranger Things fan, we can help you find things to watch in the interim. So without any further ado, I want to go ahead and jump right into the Rex. Hope you enjoy. Okay, we are going to kick things off with a pretty blatant reference, particularly in season 4, and that would be to 1976's Carrie, which is available to you on our Hoopla digital service. Now, the show has definitely called out the film in seasons past. Pretty much any time Eleven has to deal with the rest of the world at large, that sort of unfamiliar interaction definitely has little nods to the Sissy Spacek vehicle. But man, does season 4 really go all out with the shout outs. Of course, I'm referring to any time Elle has to deal with her ridiculously horrible and sadistic classmates in her new school. That's right out of the original Carrie story, whether you're talking about the book upon which it was based, which is Stephen King's first published novel, actually, or the Sissy Spacek movie. There are just so many parallels. Now, in Carrie, we are dealing with this rather debilitatingly shy girl. She's 16 years old. She's incredibly isolated. She is the epitome of the high school loner. Honestly, she has zero friends at all. And it's like blood in the water, man. Those kids that she goes to school with they have such glee in torturing her and tormenting her. It's really hard to watch, to be perfectly honest. I mean, it's really well done. Like, the movie is fantastic. Sissy Spacek, like I mentioned, plays Carrie, and she's just incredible in that role. But it's really rough to watch. Like, and what's most disturbing about it is, like, bullying has not gone away, or is it likely to at in any near future. I mean, the theme is very real. In Carrie, we're dealing with a young woman who has these rather supernatural powers that she develops as things get worse and worse for her. But I mean, this kind of behavior, the tormenting, the bullying, that's very real. It happens every day. So I think that's what makes Carrie so scary and horrifying, is that outside of that supernatural element, this happens. Um, Carrie, of course, is dealing with so much more because of these like intense telekinetic powers. She also has this horrific mother who is unbelievably abusive, both physically and emotionally. And situations in the film are definitely not what you deal with on a regular basis, but that whole concept of isolating, of culling the herd of the cool kids versus the not cool kids, that's pretty spot on. The 76 adaptation of Carrie, because there have been a couple different versions and a couple of like pseudo sequels, don't watch those ones, just watch this 1976 version. This original was done by Brian De Palma. It's incredibly well directed. You know, the special effects that are going on at the time for that period were really well done, but it really is all about the acting. You've got Spacek just doing a powerhouse job as Carrie, but the secondary characters are really, really brilliantly played as well. Your primary bullies, like, you'll see some pretty familiar faces. John Travolta is in there. He plays someone that you will detest immediately, and he does it very well. Amy Irving is in there, and she's sort of like your gateway character, as far as someone who's not Carrie, but that you can kind of sympathize and feel for at the same time. She does have a nice little character arc that you get to follow, and you get to sort of empathize with a little bit as you go along, because I mean, she's as much a part of the bully crowd as anyone originally, but you can also see like the waffling of emotions that goes on with that. And she does have a turn, and in any case, Amy Irving does an excellent job with a rather multifaceted character in there. And just in general, the whole build up that you get through the film, you know something horrible is going to happen. No doubt about it. It's clear from the get-go. But when things finally cut loose, it's almost cathartic to watch. I mean, horrifying things are happening on screen, but you've just been waiting for them. So they're finally here. It's totally crazy, and again, kind of cathartic. So if you are interested in a film that, though difficult to watch, is very believable in some aspects, but that still throws in that fantasy horror element that you might be searching for, if you're looking to sort of see like a more hard-edged version of some of the scenes that we get in Stranger Things, where Elle is dealing with her bullies, definitely check out Carrie. It is an absolute gem. It's just a classic. It really, really is a classic. I'd also strongly recommend Stephen King's book. It's done in epistolary style, which is, I find, always really, really interesting. So definitely recommend both the book and the film. So available on Hoopla. Carrie, you absolutely won't regret watching it. Okay, so my next recommendation is for a slightly more lighthearted reference. If you recall a scene in season 4 where Hopper's kind of hiding out in this Russian church turned smuggler's warehouse, on the wall there was this poster of a beautiful woman who was pretty scantily clad in full goth vamp regalia. Well, anyone who's into 80s horror camp could immediately identify that person as Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. So Elvira was this cult classic favorite horror persona. She became really prominent in the industry when she hosted this little show called Movie Macabre. It sort of featured 80, well, not 80s, it was in the 80s, and it featured B movies of either the sci-fi or horror genres. She was just always really witty when she would talk about the films. Like, she's very clearly clever, and she was really good at playing up different elements with her audience. And, you know, she was just a really prominent kind of icon. So I thought it was really, really funny to suddenly see her on this wall in Russia after we're dealing with all of the sort of Russian element within the series. Because that's, without giving anything really away, that was a really dark part of the series. And to see like Elvira on the wall was just kind of this nice little light-hearted nod in the midst of everything. Anyway, if you are curious about Elvira, you want to see a little bit more of her, or if you just are interested in like refamiliarizing yourself with her character, you should definitely check out a film that she made, which is kind of a send-up of all of the B-flicks she featured in her own TV show, and that movie is Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. Now, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark came out in 1988, which is a little after the TV show is, but it's still worth a watch. It's really, really fun, and it's available on Hoopla, so an easy checkout for everybody out there. In this particular film, Elvira is in a situation where she needs to raise a good chunk of money. She wants to put on this show in Las Vegas, and suddenly she comes into money when this distant relative passes away and leaves her her estate. Elvira goes out to check out what she's been awarded, and she ends up in this weird little secretive town where you've got a lot of people who have no idea what to do with this vampy goth woman. But you've also got this sort of nefarious supernatural element going on at the same time. Anyway, it's really ridiculous. It's like the humor is so like tongue-in-cheek about certain things and about her personality and persona, but she's, again, so enjoyable. She's really able to sort of break the fourth wall in a lot of ways, and make fun of herself, which is one of the things that I've always absolutely adored about her. She totally knows, you know, the gags on her kind of thing. So if you're looking for something silly, ridiculous, lots of fun, that is definitely a send-up of those sort of horror science fiction films, definitely check out Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. Again, it's available on Hoopla. Quick watch, loads of fun. I think you'll like it. Okay, so next up, if we jump back to season 3, you might recall one of the earlier scenes in the series featured Will, Mike, Lucas, and Max convincing Steve to let them sneak through all of the sort of employee hallways at the mall so that they can get into a showing of a horror film. This horror film is interrupted by a citywide blackout, but we do get glimpses of the opening scenes from that film, and that movie is, of course, 1985's Day of the Dead, which is available to you on Canopy. Now, Day of the Dead is George Romero's third installment of the Night of the Living Dead zombie series. It's considered a classic. It's a lot of fun. You should also definitely check out Dawn of the Dead, which actually takes place in a mall. So considering season 3, definitely shout outs to that all over the place. But I really like how they interrupted a showing of the third film in order to sort of set the scene for the whole season 3. George Romero is just kind of brilliant for really bringing zombie films to the mainstream. It's amazing to think that really before Night of the Living Dead, it just wasn't really a thing in horror. I mean, there's so many zombie movies today, like so many. Like you can't turn around. Like, there's zombie shark films. I mean, like, seriously, I just did this thing about Shark Week, and there was a zombie shark film. Um, and to think that, like, one person really, really made it into this global genre that people look for. I mean, think of all the things that are about zombies today. Anyway, back to Day of the Dead. Day of the Dead is an interesting installment of the series. So we've been in the other two films running, fighting, just trying to survive in a post-zombie apocalypse world, right? Day of the Dead is interesting in that it kind of is a little bit of a breather. Yes, you're still fighting off zombies. There are very few humans left. But the setting that we're dealing with in Day of the Dead is one where we've got a group of military soldiers kind of protecting a group of scientists who are dedicated to the idea of researching the zombies to see if there's some way to kind of rehabilitate them, or at least to control them, so that it's not just this mindless brain-eating horde that we've been seeing in the last couple of films. That idea in general, I mean, I guess it's a trajectory that we should all see coming. Yeah, of course, at some point things are going to calm down enough so that we want to figure out what's going on. But especially if you watch the movies in quick succession, it just feels so like, oh my goodness. Like, you know, it definitely feels like a shock and a very different twist to your general storyline. So as mentioned, in Day of the Dead, you're dealing with this heavy science element where can these zombies be controlled? You've got the two factions, the military guys, the science guys, and of course there's friction going on between them. You've also got some crazy underhanded schemes happening, a lot of mental instability because of the situation happening, and just overall a lot of zombie mayhem and fun, really. I mean, Romero's films are really, really entertaining to watch. Like, Night of the Living Dead, the first film, is just terrifying. For me, anyway, it's just terrifying. But then once you start to get into, say, like Dawn of the Dead, there's a lot more camp element to things. You start finding, like, the fun within this whole zombie genre. And then by the time we reach Day of the Dead, you've got a lot more, like, of the whole, like, zombie gags and things that are funny and things that are definitely trying to pull you into the humor of the situation. So if you do like that sort of blend of horror and comedy, along with some pretty serious, very real themes too, I mean, you really do see like the deterioration of certain people's mental states within this particular film. And you also see how people are almost always going to be your more dangerous element whenever you face a group of regular humans versus the zombies. I feel across the board, whether we're talking about Romero's films or the Walking Dead TV series, it's a toss-up as to who is going to be more of a danger to survivors. So if you're interested in something that blends horror and comedy, that definitely starts to change the way the zombie genre is looked at and played with, check out Day of the Dead. It's available on Canopy. It's loads of fun, and it's a really interesting installment to Romero's series. Okay, next and final pick of the week jumps all the way back to season 2, and a scene where Jonathan picks 2 movies to rent for the evening. One of those movies is War Games. Excellent, excellent film, kind of a light-ish techno thriller starring 80s icon Matthew Broderick. Honestly, you can't really go wrong with 1980s Matthew Broderick. Loads of fun pretty much in whatever he's in. Unfortunately, War Games is not available on any of our streaming services. It is, however, available to put on hold through CleveNet. I strongly recommend you do that. Great movie, again, super easy. They send the movie directly to either our Milan or Berlin locations. You can come pick it up when it's available. Easy peasy. Anyway, the movie I am actually recommending in this part is his second pick, which is 1983's Twilight Zone the movie. Twilight Zone the movie is available, and it's available on our Canopy streaming service. Definitely check this one out. It is awesome, especially if you're a fan of the original series, which I am. So Twilight Zone the movie is an anthology film. It's made up of 4 short segments, and each of those segments is directed by a different prominent director of the time. It was originally produced by John Landis and Steven Spielberg, and Landis and Spielberg do direct 2 of the segments. The other 2 segments are directed by Joe Dante and George Miller. George Miller, of course, is famous for the Mad Max series. And the 4 stories are all so very different, but they're also shout outs to episodes from the original Rod Serling show. And they're all really interesting in their own ways. Now, you've got Spielberg's segment feels like Spielberg's segment would. It's significantly less dark than the others. There's like a little bit of a cocoon feel to it as well. It's good. It's enjoyable, but I definitely would say it feels the least Twilight Zone-y. You know, it's the one I would say feels the most like a Steven Spielberg film from the 80s. Whereas the other ones, man, some of them are just so creepy. And yes, again, they're pulling from the original series, which was phenomenally creepy. Like, there's so many really amazing episodes that just kind of leave you with that unsettled feeling. But it's cool to see someone else's take on some of those themes. You've got really familiar actors in certain roles, like you see John Lithgow in there, Vic Morrow is in there, Kathleen Quinlan. And what I also really liked is that you get some actors from the original series to pop up. Like Burgess Meredith is the narrator in the movie, which of course had originally been Rod Serling's role. You get Patricia Barry is in there, Murray Matheson. And if you, again, are familiar with the original series, seeing those little cameos, it's a lot of fun. The whole movie is just really fun because similarly to Stranger Things itself, it has those little shout outs. You've got some really cool a little opener and a bumper to the film that sort of ties all of the pieces together. And you've got Dan Aykroyd in there in this teeny tiny role, but it's a really good one. But yeah, it's just a load of fun. And if you enjoy storytelling that is really good at setting atmosphere and mood, Twilight Zone is the way to go, whether we're talking about this movie or we're talking about the original series. So if you enjoy atmospheric storytelling, if you loved the original series and just want to see different people's takes on certain stories, if you want solid acting, great writing, check out Twilight Zone the movie on Canopy. It's fantastic, and it's just a lot of fun. So Twilight Zone the movie from 1983, available on Canopy. Definitely check it out. Well, Stranger Things fans and 80s fans, I have come to the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for joining me. If you have any recommendations for references that you found in the Stranger Things series, please comment with that below. I really love when people notice different references in Stranger Things and can talk about them, but I also just really like the 80s and the entertainment that came from then. If you have any recommendations for themes that you would like to see us cover in the future, comment with those as well. Definitely always looking for help with that. As I said, thank you so much for joining me this week. I love putting these kinds of lists together. This one was particularly fun, and hopefully I will see you next week. Bye-bye.